Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Today I am super stoked to be reviewing Honda's classic ST1300. In Europe, the ST1300 is known as the Pan-European. In this review video, I'm going to be giving some of the history of the ST1300. We'll also talk about the specs on the bike and the performance numbers on the bike. And in a little bit, I'm going to gear up, I'll bring the camera along, and we will take this bike out on the road to see how it rides. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. If you like classic bikes from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, please feel free to like and subscribe. I feature lots of great classic bike content on this channel. Looking at the history of the ST1300, the original ST from Honda was the 1100 version. That was introduced in 1990. That bike was powered by an 1100cc liquid-cooled V4 motor. It was a 16-valve motor, and the ST1100 quickly established itself as a reliable, smooth, and competent sport touring machine. Released in mid-2002 in the US as a 2003 model, the ST1300 clearly shares a lineage with the ST1100, but with the introduction of the new model, Honda really focused on making this bike more competent in the sporting arena, more competent in the touring arena, and so there are a host of changes from front to back. This is really an all-new motorcycle, and it shares no common parts with the ST1100. To improve the handling, Honda shortened the wheelbase on the ST1300. They also steepened the front steering geometry on the bike. The big ST is 22 pounds lighter than the 1100cc bike that it replaced. The enlarged motor in the 1300 put out 22 horsepower more than that of the ST1100. It also featured better brakes, much better wind protection, and much improved luggage carrying capacity. Looking at the specs of the bike, it's obvious that Honda enlarged the motor. The motor now displaces 1,261 cc's. It is a fuel-injected, liquid-cooled V4 motor. The engine is mounted longitudinally in the frame. It features 4 valves per cylinder. The compression ratio was bumped to 10.8 to 1. The engine features a 360-degree crank and dual counterbalancers, and that made the engine so smooth that Honda could use it as a stress member in the frame. The size of the valves was also increased in the motor, and the ST1300 features 31mm intake valves and 27mm exhaust valves. The PGM fuel injection system utilizes 4 36mm downdraft style throttle bodies. Power output for the new motor is 111 horsepower at the rear wheel. That occurs at 7,750 RPM. Maximum torque output at the rear wheel was 84 foot-pounds of torque at 6,100 RPM. Measured at the crank, the motor put out 126 horsepower and 94 foot-pounds of torque. This was good enough for the ST to clock off a 12.5 second quarter mile, and the top speed on an ST1300 is right around 141 miles an hour. The transmission in the ST1300 was also improved over that of the ST1100. It is a 5-speed transmission. It's mated to shaft final drive, and Honda did a very good job of engineering this system, and it doesn't jack up or down or alter the handling on and off throttle. Though the shifts on the transmission can sometimes sound a little bit on the loud side, it shifts very smoothly and it never pops out of gear. And I've owned the ST1100 previously, and this bike's transmission is a big improvement over the one in the 1100. The frame on the ST1300 is made up of triple box section aluminum spars, and it uses the big V4 motor as a stressed member of the frame. Looking at the suspension on the bike, the front forks are conventional units. They are 45mm cartridge type forks, and they are non-adjustable. It features Honda's Pro-Link suspension in the rear with a single shock. It has a very convenient spring preload knob that you can turn and change the spring preload, and it also has an adjustment for rebound damping that's adjustable with a flathead screwdriver. The ST has a 58.7-inch wheelbase. Wet weight on the standard model is 716 pounds, and on the ABS model it is 721 pounds. Average fuel mileage on the ST1300 is right around 43 miles to the gallon. In the braking department, the ST1300 features large dual disc brakes up front, and those are acted on by triple piston calipers. It also features a large rotor in the back, and that is acted on by a triple piston caliper as well. This bike features Honda's linked brake system. And what that means is when I grab the front brake, it activates 2 of the pistons on each of the calipers in the front. It has a proportioning valve that determines how much pressure to give each side of the braking equation. Likewise, when I hit the rear brake, it actually activates 2 of the pistons on the rear caliper, and it activates a single piston on each of the front calipers. From the beginning, Honda offered ABS brakes for their ST1300. This particular model that I have here is the ABS model. Besides the ABS brakes, the only other difference I'm aware of between the 2 models is that the ABS model has an electrically operated windshield. The electrically operated windshield on the ABS model had a total of 7.5 inches of vertical travel, which is a nice range of adjustment. The manually operated windshield on the non-ABS model only had 3.5 inches of adjustment. Since this is a dedicated touring model, we'll get into some of the more touring-oriented options that this bike has. One of the first features is a 3-position seat height adjustment. This bike also features seat tilt adjustment as well. On the lowest setting, the seat has a 30.5-inch seat height, and on the highest setting, the seat height is 31.7 inches, and it has one setting in between those two. The ST1300 actually features 2 gas tanks. It has a 5.5 gallon gas tank in the conventional position and a 2.2 gallon tank underneath the seat, giving it a total capacity of 7.7 gallons. That massive amount of fuel capacity gives the ST1300 over 300 miles of touring range, which is awesome. Instrumentation on the ST1300 features a large tachometer and analog speedometer. It also has an LED display that has a fuel gauge. It also has a trip computer. It also features a coolant temp gauge, as well as outside ambient air temperature gauge, and a clock. The trip computer has displays that show average fuel economy, instant fuel economy, range to empty, etc. So that's also a nice feature to have. Luggage on the ST1300 consisted of nicely styled, lockable, removable hard cases. They have a 35-liter internal capacity per bag, and they are large enough to hold a large full-face helmet. The bags are easily removed with the ignition key. You simply flip up this lever and pull the bags off. This particular bike also has a GD top case for it, which is very nice. It has a lot of additional storage, and it has an integrated backrest. Other nice features on this particular bike are heated hand grips and heated seats for the driver and passenger. The ST1300 also features dual compartments in the front fairing that you can put paperwork or a drink in. Those are nice, and the one on the left-hand side is actually lockable with the ignition key. All right, enough talk. What is the ST1300 like to ride? I'm going to gear up. I'll bring the camera along. Let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Honda's ST1300 ABS. This is Honda's top-of-the-line sport touring motorcycle, and this is just a super smooth sport touring machine. One of the things I noticed right off the bat when riding this machine is the roomy cockpit. It has a very roomy riding position. I'm 6'4", and this fits me just great. I also notice the smoothness of the engine. It's got a big V4, and it's very torquey and very, very smooth. I just get a little bit of vibration through the bars occasionally and a little bit through the seat and the pegs, but it's never annoying. And the speed on this bike is deceptive. It's very hard to tell exactly how fast you're going. I've got a lot of wind protection. The only wind I'm getting is on my helmet right now with the windshield dialed full down. Corner transitions are very easy. The best way I would describe riding the ST1300 is it's very smooth, very comfortable, very relaxing to ride. It's got a motor that really has the best of both worlds. It is not buzzy at all, but it still has character, and when you want to open it up, it really does have some juice to it. And that torque is nice for touring, especially when you're riding two up and you've got a passenger and some luggage. This bike has no issue with going up mountains or any kind of incline. Yeah, that's quick. That's fun. One nice feature on this bike, on a cold day, I can simply dial the windshield up and I know the camera is looking through the windshield right now. I'm actually a little bit above that and I can see over the top of the windshield, which is nice, but it is much quieter with the windshield dialed full up, and then I get full body wind protection. And right away I am kind of bathed in some warm air here, so I'm going to put this back down and enjoy a little bit of that cooler breeze. The transmission on the ST1300 is a widely spaced 5-speed transmission. Although this is a big bike, it handles like it has a very low center of gravity. And while it's not a full-on sport bike, it does handle very, very well. I have just a little bit of a lean into these handlebars. These do have some handlebar risers on them, so they're a little bit higher than stock, but not too much. And for me, this is a very comfortable seating arrangement, riding position. The rear view mirrors take a little bit of getting used to, being down underneath where you're normally used to looking, but they have a very nice view out of the back and very clear view. They don't vibrate, so those are very nice as well. And then their position blocks some wind from getting on your hands. The one thing I notice on days that are above 80 degrees is engine heat, and this big V4 throws a pretty significant amount of engine heat. They can be kind of toasty in traffic, and even when you're moving, you have such good wind protection that there's not a lot of reprieve from the engine heat. And so that's why I like these bikes much more in the colder weather. Cooler weather is fine as well. Today the high is right around 78, 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Current temperature right now is in the 70s, and this is just super, super comfortable. The suspension in the front on this bike is non-adjustable, and I would say it's actually pretty well set up with the factory settings, although I might prefer a little bit firmer springs in there, or a spacer to just kind of give a little bit more spring preload. It seems to dive just a little more than I would like under braking. And while this bike is designed to cross continents, and it is very comfortable on the highway and very comfortable at higher speeds, it's also very comfortable on these tighter back roads. It just wants to roll from side to side through the corners very easily. that torquey engine just moves you right up to the next corner. With all the torque available on this V4, this is not a shifting intensive bike to ride. On tighter back roads, fourth gear is pretty much all you need. And in the open, once you can get it above 55 miles an hour, you can just pop it into that fifth gear, but it's a very tall fifth gear. So it is geared just fine for highway speeds up to and over 80 miles an hour sustained. So far, my wife and I have taken this bike on several half-hour rides, and she commented on how smooth it is and how comfortable. She said it's not quite as comfortable as the Goldwing, but she does really like it and would really like to do some light-duty touring on it. The ST1300 has nice hard bags on it. They are removable. The addition of the GV top case on this particular bike really amplifies the amount of storage that you have. And if you're going to do some serious touring on the bike, I would highly recommend the top case. When sport riding, the suspension on the ST1300 is very well buttoned down. It doesn't wallow all over the place. It is quite quick. I have previously owned or ridden most of Honda's big V4s, and this has nice acceleration. It really reminds me of the big Sabre 1100 of the 80s. I really enjoyed riding that bike, and even though that had the same motor as the Magna 1100, I really found that the Sabre fit me a whole lot better since I'm a taller guy. But like that bike, this bike just has all-day torque. It's a good handling bike for the size of it. And it really is just a pleasure to ride. Very, very nice.
Alright, man, what a lot of fun. The ST1300 is one of the smoothest bikes I have ever ridden. Not only is it smooth, but the seating position and the ergonomics on the bike and the adjustability of the ergonomics make this one of the most comfortable bikes I've ever ridden. I'm 6'4" and I fit this bike very well. I really enjoy riding it. My wife and I have already done some extended rides on this bike, and she really enjoys the seating position on the bike, the comfort of the rear seat. She likes the fact that she has a backrest, and she likes the fact that it offers plenty of leg room for her. She's a little bit taller rider herself. I love the comprehensive wind protection of the ST1300, and on a cold day I can simply dial up the windshield and be completely encapsulated in nice warm air. And with the full wind protection and the heated grips and the heated seat, I can ride this bike literally all winter long as the roads are clear. I also love the easy handling of this bike, and it handles better than any bike that weighs over 700 pounds has a right to handle. I also really enjoy the power delivery from this big V4 motor. I love the sound that it makes. I love the fact that the engine is very powerful when you want it to be, and at the same time it feels very relaxed, and it's very relaxing to ride. I was really surprised by the quick time in the 40 to 80 mile an hour Top Gear roll-on test. The 7.3 second time that I tested is properly quick, and it's actually over a second quicker than the bike tested when it was new. This bike currently has 38,000 miles on it, and it runs great. The ST1300 has a great reputation for reliability. There are lots of these bikes with well over 100,000 miles on them, and they are still running strong. It's a very well put together package. I really like the fact that it has the ABS brakes. And for me, I'm not a fan of the link brakes personally, but when I ride the bike, it's pretty transparent from the saddle. I don't feel like it has anything special going on with the brakes. All right, I know you're thinking it's all sunshine and roses, it's the perfect motorcycle. And the reality is that it's a motorcycle. And so I do actually have some gripes with the ST1300. First and foremost is engine heat. And this is a common problem on sport touring motorcycles. And it applies to the Concours 1400, the FJR 1300. And because of the amount of engine heat that gets to the rider and the fact that there's not much wind flow coming over the rider, any day where the temperature is above about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the ST1300 just becomes uncomfortable to ride. The plus side of that is that this stays warm on days where I can't ride a conventional motorcycle, and I really like that. The second critique I have is wind noise coming over the top of the windshield. And on most of the windshield settings, for me, it's just a noisy bike to ride, so I have to wear my earplugs. Once I dial the windshield up about 75% or above, the wind noise quiets down drastically and it's a quiet place to ride. But then I don't get the airflow, which is especially critical on the warmer days. Another minor gripe I have is driveline lash. Sometimes between on throttle and off throttle, there's a bit of snatchiness. This occasionally manifests itself in kind of an abrupt gear shift. And sometimes on a slower, bumpier back road, it can be a little bit herky-jerky on and off throttle. Another minor gripe I have is that the ST1300 can be kind of a tire eater, and it goes through tires pretty quickly, and it kind of necessitates fitting a higher end tire on it that you're going to get a little bit more wear out of. But again, this is a common issue with heavy, powerful motorcycles. One other very minor gripe is that the LED display can sometimes be hard to read in bright sunlight. And finally, when you compare the power output of the ST1300, it is less than that of the FJR 1300 and the Concours. However, this is somewhat deceptive because that wide torque spread from this big V4 means that in almost any gear, almost any time, you have plenty of juice for any passing situation or any situation where you really need to get up a hill, even when you're heavily loaded and with a passenger. All you do is twist the throttle and it will get up to speed very quickly, as evidenced by the 40 to 80 mile an hour roll-on test. All right, I'd love to know what you guys think. If there are any ST1300 or Pan-European fans out there, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.